Hi, Jen.
Well, how are you?
I'm good. I'm going to be Jennifer this time, and you're going to be Jen because we have a Jen guest, a third Jen on the Jen Show.
We do, yes. So the Jen Show has a special guest that is a Jen as well, which is fun for everyone.
It's kind of like a club sandwich where there's like the bread in the middle also. I don't know.
Yeah.
I think I'm delirious from my first shot.
Yeah. Tell me about it. So you got your shot last week, right?
I did. I got it like 3 days ago, and I've been one of those that had a strong immune reaction. So I felt like I've had the flu for a couple of days. It's odd. Yeah. But anyway, I'm so grateful to be on my way to full vaccination.
Yeah. Awesome.
I hope you're soon, Jen.
I should be. Connecticut opens up April 6th, I think. Anyone over 16 can get it. I'm going to wait a little bit because I know there are people who need it, are in much greater need than I am. So I'm going to wait a little bit, but I'm sure I'll be vaccinated before we know it.
Yeah.
So yeah, that'll make my son with all of his anxiety feel much better. So that's
great.
That's my motivation is to get
I love that. It's all about that.
Always.
Happy kid, happy mom, happy house.
Yes, all of the things.
All of the things.
So what are you up to that we can chat about super briefly before we bring our guest on?
Yeah, thanks, Jen. Well, the thing I always talk about usually on this is two things. Our community call, which is Thursdays at noon Eastern. And actually, there's a very special one we're planning this week on the topic of Stop Asian Hate. So we've got an incredible workshop planned for people. We don't normally use the time to do a workshop delivery. It's more of a special guest comes on, fireside chat, Q&A. But this one is a real like working session, roll up your sleeves kind of thing. So we're really excited about that. Check it out on jenniferbrownconsulting.com or in our social media. Keep an eye out. So that's Thursday at noon Eastern. And then May 4th, which I believe we both have programs launching May 4th. Is that right, Jen?
I moved mine to the following week, but close.
Okay, close. So May 4th and then TBD, which you'll say in a second, is our Dei Foundations Course, which is a 6-week online blended learning opportunity, which means it's both asynchronous and synchronous, which means the asynchronous part is kind of consume the content as you can according to your timing. It's all sort of up there for you to grab. And then the synchronous part, of course, are the live calls where you can talk to one of our faculty and other colleagues and learn together, which is such a treat and such a special part of it. So May 4th, and again, go to Jennifer Brown Consulting other courses and you can see, and we have special discount codes here and there. So, send an inquiry to info@jenniferbrownconsulting.com and we'd be happy to share that with you. But please consider making an investment in yourself, particularly if you're new to the topic of DEI. You really want to deepen your foundational knowledge. And then who knows, someday you may want to make it what you do in the world. Imagine.
Oh, that's exciting. More practitioners, the better.
Yes, true. How about you, Jen?
So I just announced the dates for my Publish a Purpose Author Lab. So the next one starts on April 18th. It's a 10-day workshop that's completely free to get your book written. So it's April 18th to the 27th. And I'll have the link, I believe, is below this video. So people can join. And it's me going live for 10 days straight, answering questions, providing a roadmap to get the book done, which is super exciting. I ran one in February, which was amazing and gave me so much life that I am so happy that I'm doing it again. So that is my big thing. And then my Getting Started for Authors program, I will have another one that launches sometime the middle of May. So that is also exciting. And that program is a 6-month kind of writing strategy, publishing workshop, really, that, helps you actually get the whole thing done. So the 10 days is kind of like a lot of it, but then, there's a continuation opportunity for anyone who's interested. So I love it. I'm excited. It's good to be like in flow and in like your joy zone, if you will.
Oh, of course. We have to have that. And your programs are so amazing. If I can just give you a shout out, I refer people to you all the time. I think it's so worthy to be in any kind of developmental process with peers, with somebody like you, demystifying what can be a really emotional process and a really like overwhelming, like, where do I get started moment. But what we don't want is our books and our stories to get stuck in us, but to be out there in the world doing the good that they need to do in the world.
Yeah, that's exactly it. And you know what's so great is that as we bring on our guest today, which I'm going to do right now, um, what's so good in terms of like doing good in the world is that Jenn D and I were connected because of both of us having the B Corp certification. So inherently, I feel like you are our people because you're obviously part of the fabric of your business is doing good in the world too, which is so awesome and fantastic. So welcome, Jenn. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much. And thanks for the intro.
Yeah. So I'm going to so typically we have our banner across the bottom, but for the sake of everybody's sanity, we wanted to know which Jenn was who on this call. So Jennifer, I'm going to let you maybe kind of start us off with the direction that you want to head this conversation in, because I feel like we can go in so many different directions.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thanks, Jenn. Jenn D. I am super curious about your, what does Geek Girl Tech do? What do you exist to do with your vision? And you really focus in on social equity and equality as part of your mission too. So, what are you going after in the world? And I know you have a background as an IT professional and now you're applying it in this way, which I thank you for, because we really need you, all of us. And I say we, Jenn, Grace, and me, we would be your clients, because we all need to learn about cybersecurity. And specifically, though, the sort of social lens on it, the equity lens on it that you carry, I think is sort of doubly fascinating and important. So that's a lot of questions. Take that wherever you'd like to go and say hello to our audience.
Hi. So thank you. Yeah. So, when I started the company about 10 years ago, it was for a couple of different reasons. First, I saw this hole in the market where a lot of my friends who had small businesses weren't getting the security focus that they so needed. A lot of IT shops at that time were not really focused on security. I think they're getting better, but I still saw a need for small businesses to have support specifically around security. My background, I come from working in larger corporations in security. So it was also just a really great way to feel like I had a greater impact. The other aspect was in kind of wanting to do something different, right? And so again, like coming up in corporate America, used to being one of the only women in tech, one of the only women in security. And so it's challenging. And then on top of that, you would see decisions that are made in larger corporations in all business, but specifically in large corporations that were they're very profit-driven decisions, and corporations are definitely, they're looking out for shareholders, right? So it's all about money and money and money. And as a result, you sometimes see things that are happening that aren't in the best interests of human beings. And so those were kind of like my big frustrations in leaving corporate America and going into business for myself that I was hoping to work on.
And I'm curious, when you made that leap and you started, put your flag in the sand and started out with your own company, was it easy for you to identify the things that you needed to do as a small business when it came to tech and security? Like, was it kind of like something that was very natural to you, or because you were making the leap from corporate to small business, like all of a sudden, you had to kind of like reorient yourself in terms of how to set your own business up for success?
That's a really good question. It's both, I would say. So one is that I like to joke with people, and I still say this today, like you can be a really great engineer. I'm a really great security engineer. I'm great at finding all the problems with things, right? Like I can look at things and figure out all the places where things can go wrong. That's one of the things that makes me great about security, but that doesn't make you a good business owner, right? And so you might have a particular skill set but there's so much to overcome when it comes to building your own business. So in that sense, I very much had to learn and figure it out. But when it came to security, I think that my background, I also grew up in the military. And so growing up in the military, working in corporate America, and also having an eye for potential problems, it's pretty easy for me to see what sorts of things need to happen from a security perspective. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I think so. Jennifer, I know last time we talked around security issues, we both had this assumption that I was going to be in like so much better shape than you when we were talking about it. And then we
Yes.
we're like, oh wow, like neither of us is really doing that well for security. So Jenn D, I'm curious if there's any any just low hanging fruit opportunities that a small business owner could be employing within their businesses that they're just completely omitting right now that really is kind of a larger security threat.
Yeah, I think there's probably 3 or 4 things I can tell you. Like the first and probably the most important thing is just to make sure you and your team are always staying really aware of phishing attacks. That's the number one way that businesses are being compromised right now. And so every email that you get, you want to try to have a squinty eye at and try to figure out, like, is this really a message? Is this really, and whether it's through email or even LinkedIn now, messages are coming in LinkedIn. I received one the other day from a friend or a contact on LinkedIn that was a phishing attack. So that's really, really important. Second thing I would say is using a good password manager. So we recommend 1Password for our clients. And the point of using a password manager is so that, one, you can create strong passwords instead of the ones that are like the names of your pets plus your birth date or whatever, right? So as fun as those are, you really want to use something that's strong and unique and long. And using a password manager allows you to create those passwords. And because you can't remember those passwords, it remembers them for you. The third reason that we like 1Password is because it also can function as your 2FA token holder. So you're probably used to getting text messages as a secondary check, right? So you type in your password and maybe you get a text message. The next step up from that is having a rotating code. And so that rotating 6-digit code, you need a place to store those, and you can store those in your password manager as well. So between, using strong passwords, storing them safely and not in Notepad, not in Excel. Yes, I know. Believe me, we see it all the time. It's okay. And then, so strong passwords, storing them, share. It also gives you a way to securely share them with others, right? So if you need to share a password with someone, instead of sending it over email or sending it over text message, it's better to share it in a tool. And then using that tool as your 2FA application as well, which is the third thing I would say is the most important. So be aware of phishing attacks, have strong passwords and a good tool to manage them, and implement 2-factor authentication on every possible system that you can.
Yeah. So don't take the lazy road and be like, I don't need to bother with the 2-factor. So always. Yeah. I would imagine that's probably a common thing that people just kind of ignore it. Is that a safe bet?
I think people ignore everything that they can, right? You kind of think about it as like a little bit of like a minor toothache, right? It's like there's a thing people know they should do something about it, but how many people just kind of ignore minor health issues? Think about how hard it was to get people wearing seatbelts, back in the 70s and 80s. It took a lot of accidents and a lot of, seeing a lot of, pain and destruction before people finally started submitting. And even then, you still have people even today that don't want to wear helmets or, resist. I think it's the human nature to think that everything is okay and that, you're invincible. So yeah, it's definitely common.
Okay, we're both sitting here feeling guilty as charged. Right?
Oh no, don't feel guilty.
Oh no,
it's so common. Like everyone
doesn't make it right, but it is. Yes, it's definitely. Look, you're so right. It's part of discipline of being a business owner. It's a responsibility we take for also the data of our customers and our clients and all of that. I mean, Jenn and I both have these mailing lists that are growing all the time, and constantly thinking about what is our responsibility to guarding that, and then what are the systems to do that. So, Jenn and I both have fairly sizable teams, and they're growing, and we're dealing at a different scale. Is there any like level 2 advice you give then as we start to ramp up our operation, things we need to be thinking about?
Yeah. I would say number one in that regard is to think about the data that you're collecting and try not to collect it.
Mm.
That's the most important thing. So many times you'll see forms where people or businesses are asking you for information that really potentially could be used against you in some way. So the more information you're collecting from people, the more you're potentially losing if there's a breach. So I would say number one is don't collect anything unless you absolutely must. When you're onboarding people onto your team, if you're having to collect sensitive information like social security numbers, credit cards, things like that, instead of collecting that information from them, try to send them to the final system directly if you can. So for example, putting Gusto or another, we're on JustWorks. There's a plug for JustWorks, but we love them. And it's great because when we are getting ready to onboard someone, we don't have to collect their sensitive information. We just send them to the system, right? Whether that's Gusto or JustWorks or any other system, instead of having them send their social security number and sensitive information to us, because then we have to worry about protecting it and storing it in addition to our third-party services. I would.
That's such brilliant advice. Like, if you don't have to collect it, don't collect it. So to what degree are you saying, like, clearly, like, if you can avoid taking someone's social security number, that would probably, but what about, so I'm a book publisher, and so we have to pay out royalties to our authors. So we need their bank account information, or we need their EIN number, or there's like a whole bunch of very sensitive data that we take in, but we do it through secure systems, through like DocuSign or Sign Request or place. So it's not transmitted via an email alone, because that seems really incredibly dangerous. But, are there other things in addition to like the obvious things that you try to like avoid sharing? But is it something like try not to get people to put their mailing address in there, something, in one place together? Like, are there like those weird little things? It's like, oh shit, I didn't think of that.
I would look for purpose-built systems for collecting and managing that information. So if there's a system that allows you to allow them to put their information in and allows them to store their bank information, and that system has been secured, I would try to use that system over a document in DocuSign, right? Because DocuSign is only secure if someone has put two-factor authentication on it. And if their email is secure. And by the way, email is not secure. You should never share sensitive information over email or assume that just because it's in email that someone has it secure. So you think about an attacker, what's the first thing they're going to go after? Your email. Why? Because it's where all the password resets go. And it's where all of the previous messages have been sent.
Yeah.
Right. So anytime you've sent something in email, if that email account is breached, you've lost everything. So you've now lost access to DocuSign. You can lose access to all of your other systems. So
Yeah, like what about something like Dropbox? Like, so like we don't send documents via email. We put everything in Dropbox, and then only certain people have access to certain things. Is that still doesn't seem like it's secure enough, is my guess.
I think you have to be really careful and just be really selective, right? And understand that as you're putting things in Dropbox, and while you may have security in place, you can't require, I have to go back and double check and see. Dropbox may have improved this, but it used to be that you can share something with an email address, but you can't always specify what level of security they have to have to get to it, right? And so as you're sharing data with others, that's something to think about. Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, you just have to do the best that you can, right? There's no perfect solution. Nothing is 100% secure. So you really just want to think through where are all the places that things can go wrong?
Yeah.
With this thing, like what could happen? Yeah. And then of course, if you have questions, you can always reach out to geeks like me who are great at thinking about all those things.
Yeah. That's why we need geeks like you.
That's right. Thank goodness. And more diverse kinds of geeks. So it's a good segue to talk about what you're what you're passionate about, which is diversifying those of us in tech, right? And all the barriers that we all are so well documented about, what gets in our way. So how are you like creatively investing in changing that. That goes, I think, like, what are the traditional remedies? And then it's like, how do you think about your remedies, the way you've chosen to intervene in that system, interrupt the biases, and prepare people for careers in tech in a different way?
Yeah. So I think the typical way that tech is trying to help with a situation is to try to put a lot of money into different training programs, and make the training programs more affordable and accessible. And Google has a lot of really great free training programs now that you can just go do, and you can get like an IT certification. There's lots of stuff that's free and available. I think that's really great. What we're trying to do is we're trying to help people with that next step, right? So there's lots of training programs out there. Awesome. But what happens if you get that training? You still have to go get a job, right? And so when you go to apply for jobs in security or jobs in tech, many times people are faced with, oh, you need to have 2 to 3 years experience or more, or they're looking for people who have wide varieties of experience that you might not have gotten in that training program. So that's where we're hoping to come in, right? Which is to take folks who already have some training, already have some experience, and get them to the next level. So we'll put them on projects that help them get additional experience and on-the-job training and real-world experience, right? Because it's one thing to go through a training program, but it's a whole nother to actually like be doing it and living it like day after day and see the sort of problems that businesses are up against, right? Small businesses have similar problems that enterprises have. Just because you're a small business doesn't mean you don't have the same sorts of concerns. So it's I would argue it's an even better opportunity for experience, because one of the challenges that we face is finding tools that work as well and secure as well as large enterprise tools, but that we can scale down to small business. So it's kind of like, if you can secure a small business, I feel like it's going to be a lot easier to secure, not easier, but it's a natural progression to be able to step into larger companies as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, if you start small, like it's easier to evolve to, rather than being like, oh crap, we didn't think about this at all in our climb to this position.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So we try to do that with we try to do really intentional hiring practices. So when we're looking to hire, we're really careful about, we're not necessarily going to Indeed.com or Craigslist and just like posting a job and letting whoever, apply. We're going to the places where we want to hire. So we try to have really intentional hiring practices. We ask questions of all of our vendors. We're trying to ask, what are your diversity numbers? So when we're looking at working with other tech companies, are they founded by women? Do they have diverse teams? So these are questions that we're asking of our vendors and of our clients. So when our clients come to us, we ask them if they're socially conscious. We're having conversations with them about what that means, and just kind of helping to spread the gospel of, of diversity and of socially conscious business in everything that we do.
I love that ecosystem approach, and just raising it. And ultimately, I would imagine making decisions too about who you partner with, partially at least based on, are we aligned in our journey, right? Are we, and then if not, and then that relationship is desired either way, I think there is some really healthy accountability and catching up that can happen when there's someone you really want to work with, or a contract you really want to win, or right. And the teaching and the learning can go back and forth between entities of a lot of different sizes. I don't think that you have to be, matching in terms of size. It's more, I think, in fact, I would imagine early stage and small stage companies can teach the big ones a lot, because the big ones are the ones that are my sort of specialty. And I can tell you, way behind, that, it's pretty pathetic what's going on. So, we need that fresh perspective, but we also need the accountability for change, to say, look, this has to be a priority in order for us to partner together and feel that we're aligned, and not just leaving you with no tips, but to say, like, we're on this journey together, and there's some kind of partnership that can happen. I think even between competitors, it's really interesting. I think I love to think about DEI work as the rising tide lifting the boats. and benefiting entire industries, entire ecosystems in that way, because it's something that kind of transcends. I've heard the word co-opetition, which I really like, which is like this neat kind of hybrid of how could we all make each other stronger and be more transparent about what we're learning and what's helpful. And then, yeah, I think that's great. So thank you for using your influence to change a system that really needs your voice, Jenn.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love that term, the co-op. What was it?
Co-opetition.
Co-opetition.
Yeah.
I think one of the things that's really interesting about the difference between like feminine energy and masculine energy is this idea of like collaboration versus competition.
So true.
Right? There's so much business in the world that really there's really more. There's way too much business in the world and problems that need to be solved to really focus on competition. So.
Well said. That's a great final note, right, Jenn Grace? That's beautiful.
So perfect. Couldn't agree more. Thank you, Jenn, for joining us today. This was fantastic and always a good conversation, Jennifer. And so we will be back next Monday, I think it is.
I think it is.
I believe it's Monday. It is. It's next Monday at 10 a.m. Eastern.
Okay.
So, yeah. So thank you. Yeah, thank you. This is great. And Jennifer, as before we went live, it's like, we've done over 50 of these conversations and haven't had another Jenn yet. So how great is this? I think it's probably like 55. I think we've done. So this is fun.
Wow.
Well, I appreciate the opportunity. Thank you so much for having me on. It's been great.
Yeah, you bet. Oh, you know what? Just super brief. Can you let people know where to find you? I want to make sure that if they want to check you out,
Sure. Oh, they can check us out. Our website is geekgirltech.com, and there's no spaces, so it's just geekgirltech.com. Yeah, you can also find me on LinkedIn if you'd like to connect personally.
All of the places. Perfect. I'm so glad that I remember that. Yes. So Jenn is your gal if you need some geek support.
Yes.
Thank you both. Talk to you soon,
Thank you
Jenn.
both. Have a wonderful week.